Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Speak Smart podcast. Today, we're going to be diving deep into a topic that's perfect for all you bookworms out there, using audiobooks to boost your English skills. I recently stumbled across this fantastic podcast episode with these two hosts, Sophia and James, and they shared some incredibly practical advice, and I knew we just had to break it down for you.
Yeah, their approach to audiobooks is really interesting. It's more than just passive listening. They actually recommend pairing audiobooks with reading to create this powerful 1-2 punch for language acquisition.
Okay, so it's like a surround sound experience for the language, right?
Exactly. It's all about that dual reinforcement. When you both see and hear the words simultaneously, you're engaging multiple senses. And this helps to solidify those neural connections in your brain, making it easier to remember vocabulary and grammar structures.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like learning a song. You pick it up so much faster if you're not just listening to it, but also looking at the lyrics.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And just like choosing the right song to learn, Sophia and James emphasize the importance of starting with an audiobook that matches your current English level. If you jump into something too complex, you risk getting overwhelmed and discouraged.
Oh, I've been there. I remember when I first started learning English, I thought it would be a brilliant idea to tackle Ulysses by James Joyce.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say it was a bit ambitious. I think I spent more time staring blankly at the page than actually understanding the words.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a common mistake to aim too high too soon. Sophia and James really advocate for the idea of starting simple. Even with children's books, or what are called graded readers, these are specifically designed for English language learners and offer a more gradual, structured approach. You build a solid foundation before taking on those literary behemoths.
Right, so starting with something manageable is key to avoid that frustration. But once we've found our perfect book match, how do we actually make the most of this audiobook reading combo?
Well, one of the key takeaways from Sophia and James is the idea of turning it into a social activity. They suggest finding a study partner or even creating a mini book club where you can discuss the book, clarify doubts, and practice your speaking skills together.
Ooh, I love that. It's like taking all the best parts of book club, the shared experience, the lively discussions, and applying them to language learning.
Precisely. And if you don't have a study buddy readily available, you can always imagine us as your companions in this deep dive. We're right here with you, exploring these ideas and cheering you on.
That's the spirit. And speaking of cheering ourselves on, Sophia and James also had some great tips for staying motivated and tracking progress. They recommend keeping a language learning journal where you can jot down new words, phrases, or any interesting insights you picked up.
Yeah, it's all about recognizing those small wins. Our brains are wired to love rewards. So even the act of writing down a few new words each day can give you a sense of accomplishment and keep you going.
It's so true. It's easy to get caught up in the big picture of becoming fluent and forget to celebrate your small victories along the way.
Absolutely. And building on this idea of celebrating progress, Sophia and James remind us that learning English doesn't have to be confined to books alone. They encourage learners to branch out and incorporate other activities into the mix. Things like watching movies, listening to music, or even following English language social media accounts.
Yeah, this is where it gets really exciting for me, because it brings in that element of personal enjoyment. Like if you're passionate about a specific hobby or topic, why not find English resources related to it?
Exactly. Let's say you're a foodie. You could start following English language recipe blogs, watch cooking shows in English, or even try attending a virtual cooking class taught in English.
That's such a brilliant way to make the learning process feel more natural and enjoyable. It's not just about studying grammar rules. It's about connecting with the language in a way that's relevant to your life and interests.
And it's important to remember that as you're exploring all these different avenues, mistakes are going to be part of the journey. What's important is to embrace those mistakes and view them not as setbacks, but as opportunities for growth. Yes, Sophia and James really emphasize that mistakes are not the enemy. They're actually valuable feedback. Every time you make a mistake, you're essentially highlighting an area where you can improve.
Yeah, I love that reframing. It's so easy to get caught up in that feeling of frustration when we make a mistake. But if we can shift our perspective and see it as a learning opportunity, it becomes much less daunting.
Absolutely. And sometimes those mistakes can even lead to some pretty funny stories. I remember once when I was first learning English, I tried to order a coffee at a cafe and I accidentally asked for a cup of mistake instead of a cup of milk.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I can just imagine the barista's face. But hey, at least you got a good story out of it, right?
Exactly. And more importantly, it reinforced the correct pronunciation in my mind. So embracing those moments with a sense of humor can actually make the learning process more memorable and enjoyable.
That's a great reminder that learning a new language doesn't have to be this serious, high-pressure endeavor. We're allowed to laugh at ourselves along the way. In fact, I think a little bit of laughter can make the whole experience more fun and engaging.
I completely agree. And I think that's one of the key takeaways from Sophia and James's advice. Finding ways to make language learning enjoyable and sustainable. It shouldn't feel like a chore. It should feel like an exciting journey of discovery.
Yeah, and audiobooks are such a fantastic tool for that, right? They can transport you to different worlds, introduce you to new characters, and expose you to different ways of using language.
Precisely. And when you combine that with reading, social interaction, and a sprinkle of good humor, you got a recipe for language learning success.
Speaking of recipes, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this idea of incorporating our own interests into the learning process. Sophia and James touched on this briefly, but I think it's such a powerful concept.
Absolutely. Tapping into your passions is one of the most effective ways to make language learning stick. When you're genuinely interested in something, you're more likely to engage with the material. Remember what you've learned and seek out more information.
Right. It's like that saying, choose a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. I think that applies to language learning as well. If you find ways to make it enjoyable and relevant to your interests, it won't feel like such a chore.
That's a great point. It's about finding those sweet spots where your passions intersect with your language learning goals. Let's say you're a history buff. Imagine the possibilities. You could delve into historical documentaries in English, read biographies of famous historical figures, or even join online forums where people discuss historical events.
Right. It's about immersing yourself in the language in a way that feels natural and exciting rather than forced and tedious. And I think that's where audiobooks can really shine. They provide that immersive experience whether you're listening to a gripping thriller, a thought-provoking nonfiction book, or even a lighthearted romance.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to language learning. What works for one person might not work for another. The key is to experiment, try different methods, and find what resonates with you personally.
Yeah, that's such an important point. It's about giving ourselves permission to explore and discover our own unique learning styles. Some people might thrive in a structured classroom setting, while others might prefer a more self-directed approach. The beauty is that there are so many resources and options available these days, whether it's online courses, language exchange apps, or, of course, audiobooks.
And speaking of options, I think it's important to acknowledge that learning a new language can feel overwhelming at times. There's so much to learn. Grammar rules, vocabulary, pronunciation. It's easy to get bogged down in the detail.
Oh yeah, it's true. I remember feeling that sense of overwhelm when I first started learning English. I was constantly bombarded with new words and grammatical structures. I felt like I was drowning in information.
It's a common experience, and I think Sophia and James offer a really helpful antidote to that overwhelm. Focus on the small steps. Don't try to conquer the entire language at once. Instead, break down your learning into manageable chunks and celebrate each milestone along the way.
Right? It's like that old adage about eating an elephant one bite at a time. It might seem like an impossible task at first, but if you break it down into smaller, more digestible pieces, it becomes much more achievable.
Exactly. And I think that's a key takeaway for our listeners today. Whether you're just starting out on your English learning journey or you're further along the path, remember to focus on the small wins. Celebrate those moments of progress, embrace the mistakes, and find ways to make the learning process enjoyable.
And don't be afraid to get creative. Explore different resources, try different methods, and most importantly, personalize the learning experience to fit your own unique interests and goals.
That's the spirit. It's about making language learning an integral part of your life rather than something you dread or feel obligated to do.
And I think audiobooks can play a significant role in that process. They offer a way to engage with the language in a fun, immersive, and accessible way.
Absolutely. And as Sophia and James remind us, it's all about finding what works for you and making the learning journey an enjoyable one.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of audiobooks for English learning, I'm curious to hear what resonated most with you. What's like one actionable step our listener could take today to incorporate audiobooks into their learning routine?
You know what really stands out to me is that idea of making it social. even if you don't have a formal study group. Even just talking to a friend about what you're reading in English, of course, can be so beneficial. It forces you to put those thoughts into words and really solidify your understanding.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy, right? You could just grab coffee with a friend and chat about the latest chapter you listened to, or even just exchange a few messages about what you found interesting or challenging.
Exactly. And if you're feeling bold, you could even start a little online book club with fellow English learners. There are so many platforms these days where you can connect with people from all over the world who share your interests.
Yeah, that's such a cool idea. I love how technology can connect us with like-minded people from all corners of the globe. It opens up so many possibilities for language learning and cultural exchange.
Yeah, and building on this idea of connecting with others, Sophia and James also emphasize the importance of finding online communities or forums related to your interests. Not only can you practice your reading and writing skills in English, but you can also learn from others and gain valuable insights into different cultures and perspectives.
Right. It's like creating a global network of learning and support.
Yeah.
And with audiobooks as your guide, you can explore all sorts of fascinating topics and delve into different genres and writing styles.
Precisely. And the beauty of audiobooks is that they're so accessible. You can listen to them on your commute while you're working out, or even while you're doing chores around the house. It's like having a personal English tutor with you at all times.
Oh, I love that. It's like turning those everyday moments into micro-learning opportunities. And speaking of opportunities, I think it's important to remember that learning a new language is a lifelong journey. It's not about reaching some arbitrary endpoint. It's about continually expanding your knowledge and skills.
Yeah, that's a wonderful perspective. It's about embracing the process, enjoying the ride, and celebrating those moments of growth along the way. And audiobooks can be fantastic companions on that journey, providing endless opportunities for exploration and discovery.
So to our listeners out there, if you're looking for a fun, engaging, and accessible way to boost your English skills, I highly recommend giving audiobooks a try. And remember, start with something you enjoy, make it social, embrace the mistakes, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Well said. Because at the end of the day, the most effective learning is the learning that we enjoy. So find what sparks your passion, explore the world through the power of language, and never stop learning.
Thank you for listening to the Speak Smart podcast, and subscribe my channel, like the hit button.